Hey everyone, welcome back and welcome to another video. So in this one, we're going to actually do our final debugging practice before we move on to some more complicated debugging problems, and to get into really the more interesting stuff, which are going to be the final practices of this section. But anyways, so in this one, what I want to do is I want us to pull out the big guns, because so far, if you remember in the previous lesson, we actually used the print function, right, to just print stuff to figure out what is the problem here and all that. But before you actually get used to print, you got to remember that print, although is very useful in finding bugs, it's not always the best option. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment this out. And the situation where it's not the best option is when you have a pretty complicated code and it's just adding print would only add to the complication and just confuse you more. So what we're going to do is we're going to use a debugger to actually solve this problem. So the last part of this code is this one. So you just want to uncomment this again, command / or control / in Windows. And what we're going to do is we're going to solve this problem using a debugger. Now, we've talked about debuggers before. We used Thunny previously to solve our problems. Remember we used Thunny to kind of look at the code and figure out how it runs or what is the problem. Now, I don't want to pull up Thunny because I actually have another tool that I've been using, and I thought it would be just useful to kind of introduce you to a new tool as well, and that is the Python tutor. And this is a free online tool that you can actually use, and this is going to essentially allow you to drop your code right here and actually go through it. So let me explain how it works. So I'm just going to copy this code here, and let's actually first of all run this code. So let me actually explain what is the problem here. So this code is a mutator, and the idea with this mutator is that it's a function, right? And it's going to essentially mutate a list, right? And the way this does that is that it takes the list and it takes every item in that list and takes it and multiplies it by 2 essentially. So when you have a list like this, for example, 1 2 3 5 8 13, it's supposed to turn this into 2 4 6 10 all that, 16 26, all that. So that's what this function is supposed to do. So basically that's the idea with this function. Now, but if I actually run this function, there's going to be a problem. So if you take a look, instead of getting a list as a result here, or getting every item as a result, what we're getting is the final item, like one of the items, just 26 inside a list. Because what we're supposed to get is just an entire list of things, right? But instead, we're just getting a list with a single item in it. So that is the problem. That's the bug we're trying to solve, all right? We're trying to fix. So I'm just going to copy this code and put it inside the Python tutor, and we're just going to visualize it. So essentially, again, this is going to give us an idea of exactly how this code is running. So I'm just going to visualize this, and it's going to give us a visualization like this. And if you actually drag this, it's going to exactly show you how this code is running, and it's going to draw it right here. It's pretty cool. So there you go. So I'm just going to drag this, and I see the first thing it does is that it finds this function, right? But again, it immediately skips over it and goes to this line where we call the mutate function, right? And then it's going to go back to the function and it's going to start running this. So it's going to put this list, all these items, the items in this list inside this function, right? And it's going to start processing it. So first thing we see is a variable, all right? So, and this variable is an empty list, right? So that's basically what it is. And then next it's going to go to the for loop, which is going to take a look at the item inside the list. And it's going to assign a new variable, call it the item, and it's going to grab each item in this list and multiply it by 2, right? So far it's looking good, right? And then finally, it's going to go back and do the same thing over and over for each item. And, again, as it goes back and forth, and then it's going to essentially, append these items into the new items essentially to the list. And that's it, it's going to print it. Now, if you take a look, the problem here is occurring when if you take a look at the final number, so let me just go all the way down here. There you go. So if you take a look here, as you see, we got the list with the 26 in it. That's basically the results, right? So the problem here is occurring when we actually append an item. And if you take a look, the hint to that is essentially we're taking the final number. So this 13, right? This is the number in this list. So this is the final number, and we're like multiplying it by 2 and adding it in a list. This essentially is telling me that when we append something, like right here, when we're appending something, instead of appending each item, we're appending just one item, which is the final item of that list. And the reason for that is actually pretty simple. If you pay attention, is that the reason for it is actually this append command is not inside this for loop. So when we're done with this for loop, take a look. So we're running this code here, and we get to the for loop. There you go. And then we run the for loop back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. There you go. And finally, when we're done with the for loop, we go to the append and append one item. So see, that's the problem, because what we need to do in reality is that we need to append like each item when we run through the for loop. So like each time this for loop is run through, we're running through this for loop, we need to append the item. And what is happening, if you pay attention, is that the problem here is that this append is actually outside of the indentation for this for loop. So when we're done with this for loop, we only go once, run this like append, essentially append command once. So that's what we need to fix. We need to essentially, if you go back here, we need to put this inside this for loop. So all I gotta do is just tab it, and there you go. So just like that, we appended it and we put it inside this for loop. So now each time that we run this for loop, we're essentially going to, actually run this append as well. So we're appending each item to that list. Now, if I actually clear this and run it, take a look. Now we're actually going to get a list. Take a look. So we got 2, 4, 6, 10, 16, and 26. So just like that, we mutated this list, which was 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13 to this. So, and again, if you put this back inside the if you put this back inside, let me just like refresh this one more time, and if you put this new code here again, and if you execute it, there you go. So we're just gonna, we're gonna obviously run the we're gonna go look at the function, but again, we're gonna skip over it and look at this, this section where we're calling this function, and then we're going to run the function from top to bottom. And then when we get to the for loop, take a look, we're running that, we're checking the new item, like multiplying by 2, and then we're actually, appending that item to the list. There you go. So we got an empty list now, but we're now appending this item to. Now, when we appended it, we're going to go all the way back again to the for loop, and then run this whole thing again one more time, and we appended another item. Take a look. And then we go again all the way back, we appended another item, and then another item, and then another item, and then another item. There you go. So now that we're just done with the list, and the for loop is finished, essentially, we're just gonna end and print this thing. Just like that, we're done. So now if you actually pay attention, if I actually click on this, it's going to put a breakpoint, and you see it turns it red. Essentially, this is going to tell you like how often this is actually running. And if you pay attention, unlike before, we're actually running this 6 times. See, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're running this 6 times. So now that's when you know, okay, this is working. It is in the right place. It's where it's supposed to be, right? So that's basically how it works. So that's basically the the way this needs to be running. It needs to be inside this for loop. So that's pretty much it, guys. I just wanted to use Python tutor, to kind of explain this code this way, more visual way, which is a lot more easier to learn this way. But that's pretty much it. I see that our code is working now, and we fixed it. So that's basically the idea of using a debugger. Again, it's a very useful tool. Again, you've seen Thunny, and you can also use this as well. I'm going to leave a link in a resource section to the Python tutor as well, so you can actually check it out for yourself and use it. Bookmark it, use it for yourself. But anyways, let me know if you have any questions about this, guys. I hope this made sense, and I hope you learned something new. Again, the indentation, as you know, is pretty important, and that was the issue essentially with this. We didn't indent this line of code correctly. So let me know if you have any questions, guys. If not, I'll see you in the next one.